This is my Greek siren, and I'm curious if this talk is going to be interactive, so there will be multiple times where I'll encourage you to blurt out answers. Can anyone tell me what this mountain is saying to them? Any guesses? Well, maybe. So to me, it says, climb me. And when a couple years ago, I saw tracks coming down this, and I thought those people were crazy. And the next photo I'm going to show you is right here. And this is me a couple springs ago, and I think this photo is funny. And the reason I think it's funny is not because of what's happening below, but it's what's happening inside. And so inside, there's a war going on. So the amygdala, the lizard part of my brain, by the way, I wear a heart rate monitor, and at rest, my heart rate can peak at 170 beats per minute. I'm not doing anything physical. And what that tells you is the amygdala is panicking. So it thinks we're going to die. And the funny thing about this is the neocortex, the mammalian part of the brain, it knows we're going to die, but it doesn't think we're going to die today. So it's actively simulating a sequence of future events, and it's trying to determine if I have sufficient experience to execute them. And one of the through lines through this entire talk will be experience, because that's something that impacts our careers, but it also impacts AI systems. One of the bizarre things about my experience going to college, when I was in high school, I had a snowboard sponsor when I was 16, and my parents were worried that I wasn't going to go to college. And I did go to college, but not the way that they expected. So when I went to college, I decided to live in the woods. So I lived in the snow. The coldest it got when I was outside was 15 below zero, and this made national news in the US, which is funny. This actually is another glimpse into the human mind. Humans are novelty-seeking creatures, and so if there's someone doing something strange, we like to pay attention to it. We like to interview them. But I'm just a 20-year-old kid. No offense to 20-year-old kids, but I don't know anything about anything. And a few funny experiences from this experience. I was on TV twice, radio talk shows. I became a known entity on campus. And so if you've ever seen the show Forrest Gump, I know what Forrest Gump felt like at some moments, because I'd be walking to class, and I always knew when a college kid was going to talk to me, because they'd start looking at me. And they'd start looking at me faster and faster, and then they'd blurt out, and they'd say, "Holy cow, it's really you. You are Homeless Ben." And then they'd ask me a question. And the funny thing about the questions they asked, it didn't matter what the answer was. To them, it was always profound. So they'd say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you living in the woods?" And the answer would be, "Well, I didn't want to waste money on rent." It's a simple answer. And then 15 seconds later, they'd say, "That is so deep." This story is actually why I learned how to program. So this was before social media. I had to learn HTML, CSS. I had a blog. I would insert the blog link into the newspaper articles when I would talk to the journalists. And that joy of programming led to the PHP, the LAMP stack, computer vision, and then eventually high-performance computing. So I worked at Intel and Micron. This particular photo you see here, this was where I started working. We called this the billion-dollar room. So just in this room, there's over $1 billion invested in this hardware. So these machines you see on the side, they're called photolithography machines. They can cost anywhere from $80 million all the way up to $120 million for one SKU, for one machine. And these are the machines that print the circuits. So I worked here for 5 years, I worked in the fab for 1 year wearing the white ninja costume in the clean room. And it was interesting. For a few weeks, it felt like Star Wars. There's robots on the ceiling. Everything's amazing. But I wanted to do high-performance computing, so I went and worked at a hedge fund for a while. Fortunately, I quit that, and I joined a Sequoia company. One of the things I want to pepper along the way, when I worked at Intel and Micron, I was building process control models, fault detection models. And if you built a bad model, it felt like you got your hand slapped, even if it cost a lot of money. Obviously, if there's a pattern of costing a lot of money, you no longer work at that company. But if you made a mistake and if it cost $100,000, it felt like a hand slap. The hedge fund, if you had a bad model that underperformed, it was the worst day of your life up to that moment in time. And then working for HireVue, if you built a model, you now have bigger consequences. Potentially a customer could be sued because these models are dealing with people. It's hiring, humans have unconscious bias. The models that we were building were predicting interview outcome for Fortune 100 companies. So a 20-minute video interview of someone interviewing to get a job at a bank, we would analyze everything they said, everything coming in from the video, and we would make a prediction how well they performed compared to past performers. After doing that for 4 years, one interesting thing about HireVue is when I joined HireVue, I was leaving the hedge fund, and I treated HireVue like a hedge fund. And at the time, I didn't appreciate that. I appreciate it much more now because the consequence of failure is we were doing very big, ambitious things. We were bringing automatic speech recognition in-house, very expensive. Things were working, but for some of these things, I understand now, if they fail, people get fired. You can't go spend $300,000 in the corner and say, oops, especially for like a fast-paced VC startup. So at HireVue, after 4 years, I started a deep learning company. And it's funny because we started a deep learning AutoML company in 2018, and I was very worried that we waited too long because there's always that fear of jumping off the cliff. Can I really fly if I cut the strings? Did we wait? Should I have quit my job six months earlier? And so when we quit, the first year we had 3 acquisition offers, which honestly doesn't say anything about us. If you were a deep learning company startup with a PowerPoint in 2018, companies want to buy you. And it's really just an acqui-hire. And we signed one of them. And one of the funny stories with this experience taught me a lot of important lessons about value, how to communicate with executives, urgency versus strategy. There's so many lessons that come out of startup that can be quite painful. So having paid payroll myself out of my personal bank account, when it comes to firing people, they are people. They have lives. But when it comes to firing people, this will sound quite cold. It's not meant to be. But when I've had to fire people, it's not that I just want to fire them. I want to go back in time and fire them because the damage that was done within the company is so significant. And often we don't fire people fast enough because it's awkward. And it's also a painful thing for both parties. So our first year, we signed one of the letters of intent. And my co-founder asked me, what should the number be? And I told my co-founder, tell the CEO $30 million, which is hilarious because we have a couple of customers and we don't have a lot of revenue. He tells the CEO that. There's a negotiation. We end up signing a letter of intent. And a few months later, right when we're about to close, I'm losing sleep. I'm losing sleep because it's not enough, which is actually really sad when you think about it. Not enough I've got 3 beautiful kids, got a wonderful spouse. Not enough for who? Not enough for my ego. My ego was just out of control coming out of the hedge fund and working at HireVue. Fortunately, we backed out of the offer because we had some big, we're doing a proof of value with SpaceX. We had a very large insurance company we were in the works with. And I think as a new first-time founder, you look at your revenue, and it's this little silly curve, and you're looking at your momentum, and you're an optimist, and you're thinking, well, if we close SpaceX, and if we do this, we're the fastest growing startup in the world, which is not true until it happens. Fortunately, 3 years later, I sold in desperation. Startup kicked my ass, totally kicked my ass, which I needed. I definitely needed it. It was a gift. And now when the acquisition offer came from DataRobot, we had reversed roles, and my co-founder, so now I'm the one asking my co-founder, what is the number? Because we're fighting, and I'm desperate to sell. And I apologize for swearing, but he says, fuck the number, which is actually a little funny now. It wasn't funny then, because it caused a massive fight. But that is not technically a number. I can't work with that number. Fortunately, we had a huge fight, and when I was able to convince him to sell, we sold. And then I worked for DataRobot for 2 years, and there's a lot of lessons along the way, and hopefully one of the things I'll be able to share throughout the rest of the talk are some of these key lessons and regrets and new perspectives. So changing gears a little bit, what is intelligence? So if we're going to dive into AI and how we can augment ourselves, we need to understand what is this term intelligence. So intelligence is the ability to acquire knowledge from experience for future decisions. And so if we march through the animal kingdom, is this caterpillar intelligent? Yes. Okay. And there's different degrees of intelligence. Does this caterpillar have religion? Is it thinking about life after death? Probably not. And to give you a specific example, if I decide to poke this caterpillar in the eye every morning, is it going to have anxiety tomorrow when it sees me? It's a low enough life form, there's not some uncertainty. We could test that. We could test this. Every morning I poke that caterpillar in the eye. What about a cat? If I poke this cat in the eye, what is it going to do tomorrow when it sees me coming up? It's going to scratch me. It's going to run away. But it's interesting because when you look at these different animals, there's something that is very profound with people. People, just like this cat getting poked in the eye, can have experience and learn that I really don't like Ben. When Ben comes around, I'm running the other way. Humans are very different. What happens if I poke a human in the eye? Especially a human that can communicate. Not only can the human share that experience with the room, but if I live longer than a human, that experience is shared through time, which is really, really interesting because you get this compounding experience. So if you think about your own experience, are you smarter today than you were as a child? You, when you're 5, 6, absolutely. It's hard to quantify how much smarter you are. It's orders of magnitude. It feels nearly infinite compared to you as a child. And now this is the difficult question that gives people anxiety later in life. Are you smarter today than you were yesterday? Did you know that experience is not a guarantee of increased intelligence? There's neural rutting, there's habits. You can actually become dumber over time, and you can inherit behaviors in your company where this is how we've always done it. And it's quite common to become anti-innovative over time, which is why we like hiring new talent, new ideas to come in and try to stir things up. And in language is really, so I'm gonna jump into a different part of the story, but it's fascinating that we have so much intelligence from all the learned experience of humanity, but for our individual intelligence, there's not a guarantee that we can keep increasing that over time. We have to be mindful, we have to be thoughtful, and we have to call ourselves out for our own bias. So something that happened a few years ago, I was feeling sad, and I was feeling sad for a reason that is maybe nonsensical. I knew AI could play these video games, but I wanted it to play my Xbox. And the reason I wanted it to play my Xbox is it didn't matter how much I played the Xbox. These kids, which I could hear on the mic, they must be 7, they're much better than me. I don't have the cognitive reflexes, I can't beat them, but I was pretty determined that I think I could beat them with technology. I think, but I'm not sure. And so for years, I just assumed this was something that was impossible. And then I found a gimmicks adapter. So this gimmicks adapter, I ordered this from France. I played with it for a few weeks, and I realized I think I can get AI to play my Xbox. It was very important to me. It had to be a stock Xbox. I didn't want to modify the Xbox. And so I call up Intel, and I tell them, I think I can get AI to play my Xbox, and I need your fastest server. So they ship a server to my house that has 12 terabytes of RAM and 196 Xeon cores, and I live in a 3-story house, and this computer is so loud that in the basement, with all the doors closed, my wife can hear it upstairs. And I can hear it outside the house when I'm gardening. And I'm wondering if my neighbors are far enough away, and it's a very high-pitched whine. It's not a good sound. So this computer begins to play, and this is using reinforcement learning. So it can actually go and experience things on its own. And for several months, it kind of felt like Christmas. So I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd realize, oh, my Xbox has been playing itself. And I'd run downstairs and I could hear it. And it's playing Call of Duty, by the way. And I guess I should have said that. It's kind of a darker part of the story. And I remember standing there holding my coffee, watching the game play, and I watched it do the first autonomous kill, which should have been a celebration, because from a technology perspective, that's the milestone. And so when I see that happen, I felt a different feeling. It wasn't warm and fuzzy. And it wasn't, oh boy, this is fantastic. It was, this feels strange. And one of the fun things I like doing is interacting with different artists. So I met with an artist over coffee, and I told him, I wanted him to capture the scene of the emotions, what I was feeling that morning. And so I wanted him to have a kid playing the Xbox, and then on the other side of the screen, I wanted to have an AI monster. And so I told him, I need the monster to be smarter than a human. So he needs to convince me of this visually. You need to convince me it's consuming a terawatt of power, and it needs to be bigger, faster, stronger, and see better than a human. So he comes back a week later with this, and I'm like, holy crap. Because this is just a napkin sketch. And then I asked him, and this is my son, by the way, he's also a monster. And then I asked him, how long would it take you to have them come into the same reality? Because this is a scary thing. You can have some digital algorithms that are misbehaving, and if they escape the box, that is a problem. So a day later, he came back with this. Here we go. And AI is a two-edged sword. It can tackle some of the most important problems that we need today. Healthcare, et cetera. There's so many things that AI can do to help us. But there is also a darker side. There are things that AI can do to accelerate bad behavior. And to bring it back to positive, with these powerful algorithms, the fact that a hobbyist can begin playing their Xbox in the basement using very, very powerful algorithms that are freely available, one of the issues we struggled with is with storytelling. So when you bring in really big, powerful models that are very complicated with tens of millions of connections or even billions of connections, how do you tell a story that a human will appreciate? Because the last thing we want is a black box model. A black box model is a disaster. So if you're going into the physician and if an AI says 83% we're going to delay your heart surgery, why? Oh, it's 83%. The model's very confident, don't worry. That is not how this should work. It needs to be a collaboration. You need humans in the room, subject matter experts. You need people that can say, I disagree, we're doing the surgery anyway, because that's how this is going to work well. So I want to show you a few examples of the power of storytelling that have evolved over the last 7 years. You are correct. It is a hummingbird. So within 150 milliseconds, all of the brains in the room, hummingbird, knew it. Why is this a hummingbird? So this is something we don't normally ask. Let's pretend I'm going to sue you because I think it's not a hummingbird. It's a robin. I am furious that you have said this is a hummingbird. How would you defend this decision? And we take this for granted, but if you begin to hold your hand up over different parts of the bird, you will realize that there are some key parts. If you had to prioritize features, parts of this hummingbird, big and small, I think we would come into some common agreement on why you think this is a hummingbird. AI thinks this is a hummingbird with 99.9% confidence, and this is telling you why. So it's showing you the activation maps. So AI is admitting that most of the decision is going into the beak. The beak is really driving this behavior. And I think when you see that, it concurs. You think, yeah, I agree. This makes sense. I also could have come up with something similar as a human. Now, this next one is more challenging. I believe this is Keira Knightley. What age do you think she is in this photo? Any guesses? Anyone want to throw out an age number? 35? Okay. So AI is better than a human at predicting age. So a human for an adult will be plus or minus 3 years, AI plus or minus 2, and that's continuing to shrink. But now the more challenging question for the humans, how would you defend your guess? How would you mark this up and defend your guess? This is how AI defends its guess, which is pretty interesting because AI has no concept of the crow's feet lines or the lips or the nose. And so this is an example where storytelling can start to come back and interact with a human expert. This one's maybe a little silly, but it's fun. So in the future, humans drink, we go to games, sometimes we swear way too much. And if there is a droid mother with her droid son, she might want to filter some of the things that the humans are saying. So if you wanted to build an F-word detector using AI, you can do that. So I did that with The Wolf on Wall Street. It has 500 F-words, great training set. And this is interesting because it's showing the same thing. So it can actually show you in that window in time where the F-word is said at a very macro level. And this is maybe getting a little too nerdy. One of the issues with audio analysis is they've been so aggressive on the slide window. So when I built automatic speech recognition systems at HireView, it needed a 10 millisecond slide, which is a nightmare for compute. Automatic speech recognition can be unbelievably expensive just to process and consume. Here's another example. So it's interesting that if you want to guess where in the range the word was said, it becomes, you begin to get these peaks of focus. This F-word detector was pretty confident, by the way, which I think is funny. The F-word is a very good word to detect. Other words are a little bit more complicated. I really like this example. Can anyone guess which country you think this individual is from? So if you looked at her and you had to guess a country of origin, what would you guess? I'll give partial credit too. Any guesses? Yes. Most people do not guess that. She is from Greenland. And it's really interesting because what you're seeing in the background, these deep learning models that build predictive outcomes, they can do some very interesting things. So this deep learning model can actually sort countries based on facial similarity. And this clustering, you can see these different groups, and Greenland is this outlier. But if you ask this deep learning model, which was built in 2017, which country is most similar to Greenland, it is showing you countries in East Asia, which is true genetically. It's quite fascinating because you think for the natives in Greenland, they did not settle from the east; they settled from the west, which is really interesting. But isn't it fascinating that an AI model can begin organizing a map of the world on facial similarity? Which is interesting because this is a very old study. I imagine today this would be even more fascinating on how fine-tuned this would be. This is a little creepy. So I finally was able to announce yesterday where I work, which was really exciting because it's been weeks coming. So I work at DataIQ, and I had to go get new headshots. And headshots I don't like getting headshots. I'd much rather have AI just do it for me. So this is AI attempting to make headshots. So these 4 photos, they're not me. And you could tell when you look at the eyes, like something's off, right? If I put sunglasses on, there's something, I think the eye, it's the window to the soul, and AI is still struggling with that. But isn't this amazing that all of these photos are generated? These photos are generated with AI attempting to make headshots, but this is rapidly progressing. So there is a future where instead of you going to get headshots or family photos, you could just upload your social media, your Instagram, and then you would upload Pinterest or some style that I would really like headshots in this style. And if you could add 5% Brad Pitt, 2% Ryan Gosling, you could begin mixing. That would actually be very straightforward to do, just enough that no one calls me out on it. And then when I go around speaking, people would just think I was hungover or something. They'd be like, "Oh wow, you really didn't sleep well last night." But they don't know it's actually my AI headshot. So DataIQ, one slide for my employer, and then we'll dive into why models fail. So they are a full stack end-to-end platform. They are similar to my previous employer, DataRobot. And it's interesting because building AI systems, it is a collaboration, which is different than it used to be. So when I was at HireVue, I like to tell the younger kids, when I built AI systems decades ago, I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways. Virtualization, Docker, are you kidding me? We did everything on bare bones, hard metal, and everything was terrible. And it would take a very long time to build stuff. And when you compare the difference, back when I was building AI models, you had to trust the individual, which is really, really scary. Is this model working? I don't know. We trust this Ben kid. He seems sharp. That's a disaster. Massive liability. People leave companies where I have made many, many mistakes by not inviting the subject matter expert into the room. And that is something I have a lot of respect for now. So when you have an individual who's worked a process in a business, it doesn't matter what their title is. I need to find the human that has worked this process for 5, 10, 20 years, because they're the ones that will have the best ideas, and they're the ones that will have the biggest complaints if the AI is not working. And they're also the ones that can hold AI accountable on the value. Because often a data scientist will say, the model, the AUC is 0.83, or this is the accuracy. What does that have to do with the business? There's lots of examples of very high-performing models that are garbage. And so the collaboration is important. So if AI can do all these great things, if it can almost make headshots with sunglasses, if it can play Xboxes, if it can do all of these things today that it wasn't able to do, why do most AI models fail? The failure rate in the industry is shockingly high, 85%. Common agreement, models fail. They fail to get into production. They fail to deliver value to justify the attempt. And with this recession, a lot of data science teams end up getting cut because they never were able to connect the dots to value. And so I'm going to show you 3 AI examples that I've worked on personally. And I want you to guess which of these projects was transformational and which of them weren't. And I'm not testing your AI acumen. I'm testing your business acumen. So you are all CEOs. And you need to tell me which of these projects was transformational. So the first one, I'm going to try to sell you really well on all of these. So the first one is swimming pools from space. So I'm going to use deep learning, and I'm going to look at residential properties, and I'm going to predict if there's a swimming pool, and I'm going to automate this. So this is a very, very large insurance company. Swimming pools from space. Good project, bad project. Second one, oops. There we go. This is a large e-commerce store. They have millions of photos that are uploaded every day from users, and they want to have AI automatically add attributes instead of having people do it. So AI will say that this is a sweater, or this is a scarf, and this will help with search. And then the final one is we're all familiar with social media influencers. They make a lot of money. They're paid to drink a Coke and post brands. I want to have AI tell me if they are holding a specific brand and to automate that. So out of these three projects, swimming pools from space, cute sweaters, or do you have my Coke? Which of these projects was transformational? If you choose the wrong one, you're fired. Any brave individuals that have a guess? E-commerce. Okay. Any other competing guesses? First one, swimming pools from space. Taxation? Which one are you referencing? The swimming pool, okay. So this is actually a trick question. I like trick questions. None of these are transformational. So let's actually go through each of these. So none of these initial projects were transformational, but they all had transformational alternatives. So swimming pools from space, awesome. What is it worth? Is it worth millions of dollars a year? No. Is it worth $100,000 a year? No. Okay. So the only thing we can agree on with the business is it's worth more than zero. So when you get in that territory, that's not a good territory to be in. But loss prediction, just a better model. Just a better model in loss prediction is worth $30 million if you're predicting the loss potential on the property. So swimming pools from space, there's a lot of touch points and work that underwriters will do. And so if you're just automating or improving one touch point, that doesn't save them from the rest. And so it's very hard to defend. So one of the things I encourage people is you're looking for those big value projects. You don't want to have a basket of small wins. You want to have a few big wins because they will get the attention of the business. In the questions that should have been asked for both of these projects, so again, this one, these attribution models are complicated because they depend on the human quality for data labeling. And often humans suffer with data labeling quality, and you have this long tail of products that just don't have enough data to build a model. So the key question to ask for both of these projects would be, what is the number for your business where a small change makes you excited? Well, insurance is loss prediction, and in e-commerce it's click-through rate. Click-through rate, product recommendation, very small improvements in those numbers lead to big numbers, millions of dollars in value. So rather than doing image attribution, having an AI that's accelerating click-through rate or improving product recommendation can have a big impact. This final one is my favorite. So the key question to ask to find the right project on this, where is your growth bottlenecked by human capital? I like this question. If they don't have a quick response, then I make it silly. Congratulations. I'm gifting you 1,000 people tomorrow. They are experts. What job family are they? And they're free for a year. What are they doing in your company to help your company grow? And for this particular company, they were bottlenecked by human sourcing. They didn't have enough people that could look at social influencers to determine if they should engage. So they could only look at social influencers that had a minimum of 10 million followers. When they added AI a couple weeks later, it was better than any of the human sourcers. And I think the knee-jerk reaction is, uh-oh, what's going to happen to the humans? None of the humans were let go. If the humans were now able to do innovation, because before humans were just working a process, they are a bottleneck. Now the humans are able to partner with the AI systems and have new ideas and say, oh, that's very interesting that this is driving this behavior. What about this? What about that? And it allowed this company to completely transform because now they can go bid on social media influencers that no human organization can. Because you don't have enough humans to go and reach out to an influencer with 30,000 followers. But bring these AI systems in, you could. So I'm going to end with the future. The future is really exciting. it can become quite selfish. So I like to joke that I can predict the future when it comes to AI because it's the future that I want to build, and I have opportunities and partnerships where I just work on the opportunities that matter to me, and that's something I hope everyone in the room can begin thinking about. What matters to you? Because AI today can do all sorts of things. I'll show you an example. I did a project last year. A lot of us have fitness routines, and we want to be more accountable, and we can use different apps to tell the apps what we're eating. So I built an AI system in my office where, and I don't have a link to it or a QR code, but it's out there online, where I had a video camera in my office, and it knows what I'm doing at all times. So it's comprehending me spatially and temporally, and it knows if I'm working, it knows if I'm doing pull-ups, sit-ups, or push-ups. And if I'm not, I don't have to interact with the AI system. It knows I'm not. And now the fun part is, what consequence do you want? Well, there's lots of consequences. So I could have AI degrade my internet performance. Do you think if my internet performance is degraded, and if I have a meeting with an executive in a few hours, do you think I'm going to be doing pull-ups during our meeting with the Zoom camera turned off? Yes, because I can't have that happen. So there are some interesting things you can do with accountability. There's also that question of, you've been in the house and you've lost your keys before. Oh, where are my keys? There is a future where that is a simple conversation. You don't have to lose your keys. You just ask the home, hey, I can't find my keys again, and your home will tell you where the keys are. This project I have not done yet, but I'm very excited to do this one. So I have 3 kids. They eat in the TV room, and it doesn't matter what my wife and I say. They still eat in the TV room. And building an AI system that disables the TV if the room is below a certain messiness threshold is very doable. This is not science fiction. There are people in the room that could do this weekend. You have all the technology components to do that. And this is actually really interesting because if your home is equipped this way, I don't think I would be telling my kids to clean anymore. Because then, rather than going from being the dictator, yelling at the kids, clean the room, this is gross. And actually this project was inspired by, I was peeling off a Little Caesars pepperoni off of our new couch, and it had the grease stain underneath, and it was disgusting. And I was thinking there's got to be a better way. So this is an example where you can begin to build systems into your home. And this one becomes more emotional. So there are too many ways that there are accidents for kids, unnecessarily. In our community pool just across the street, we had a 3-year-old drown who fortunately did not die. They were able to be pulled out and brought back. There are 4 human lifeguards. There are 4 human lifeguards, 16-year-old kids. They're paid to look at the pool. And how on earth did this kid completely submerge, an adult bumps into them, oh, there's a kid, and they pull him out, and luckily they didn't die. In the US, I believe 10 kids per month drown, quite common. Imagine a system where it doesn't blink, it's not 16, and it's not thinking, it's fully dedicated on the pool. The other thing that's sad to think about is humans actually don't know what drowning looks like. You might watch a few videos, but that is experience I'd prefer not to have. I would prefer not to consume that experience, but AI is happy to. So you can imagine a scenario where really the comparison between a human and AI is the attention. So the 16-year-old lifeguards, I would argue 80 or 90% of their attention cycles are elsewhere. Instagram, TikTok, like boyfriends, girlfriends, they're barely there watching the pool. AI, on the other hand, the moment the 3-year-old walks to the edge of the pool without the parent, that 3-year-old is the most fascinating thing. The AI system is putting all of it, the 3-year-old hasn't even jumped in the pool yet. And this is very straightforward. Hopefully you can see that from the hummingbird and stuff like that. All of the attention would be going into this potential scenario. And isn't that the type of lifeguard you want? That the lifeguard is constantly looking at, okay, this is really interesting. There's a 2-year-old over by the deep end, no parent. And now the moment the kid falls before they hit the swimming pool, alarms are off, 16-year-old lifeguards are finally awake, and they can engage. A quarter of us in the room will die of a heart attack, which is, I don't think it needs to be that high. Your heartbeat is a very intimate signal. Your heartbeat signature can actually identify you. So if we had localized radar in the room, and if we had built up a training set, you walking through the door, you have a very unique heartbeat. there is an opportunity where AI is running on every heartbeat. You have the Apple Watch and these different wearables. The way they do the processing today is it's fairly basic compared to what it could be. And so one of the passion projects of mine is, can we partner with cardiothoracic surgeons, cardiologists? Can we build some of the best AI models in the ICU so every heartbeat in the ICU is being analyzed, is being studied, and it is anticipating what will happen, what diseases you might have, and then eventually those models get exported to wearables. This is the final slide. So it's not just about the emotions that are tied to healthcare and that we could use our data experience better to make better decisions. I think there's something that's a little sadder to think about. So I was fortunate enough to go on an African safari 4 years ago. It was incredible. And this, going into it, I'm embarrassed because I felt like, well, I've seen animals in a zoo. What's the difference? There's a big difference. So a giraffe in the wild will walk 100 kilometers in a day. Now compare that to a giraffe in a zoo, in a concrete bunker. It's quite depressing. I'm not advocating for all zoos to go away because I think it's important for people to see these animals. But the comparison I'm going to make is, unfortunately for us, everyone in the room is overqualified for the work they're going to do tomorrow. Everyone in the room, their brains, all of our brains, are equivalent to the giraffe in a zoo. We are not reaching our full potential. But with AI, it's able to automate and allow us to do innovative tasks. So there's a scenario in the future, may not be for us, but for our kids and grandkids, where they are challenged every day. Every day, they are doing work that is right at the limit of their intellectual capability, and it's right at the limit of their personal abilities. They have to collaborate. And that's a really exciting future. I think many of us have had those opportunities at points in our career briefly, that this is a really hard problem. We did it with a team. This is fantastic. And then we go back to being the giraffe in the zoo, answering emails, and doing things that high school you could do. So I'm on LinkedIn, Ben Taylor Data on Twitter. My phone number's on the internet anyway. So I'm available to answer any questions, and I went a little over time. I will be around the conference as well. And if you have a question that you're not able to be answered, please reach out directly, and I'll try to answer it.
We can do a couple of questions now. Let me see, first of all, if anyone is interested to ask. Before I ask, still have to digest a lot of what you said.
Okay.
And usually I draw a lot of questions when I'm listening to. So I draw just two. The one that I want to ask you is, why would you need an AI tell you where the keys are if you can just ask the AI to let you out or let you in? I mean, why is that? Are we using AI to do some banal things that actually belong to a completely different age?
That's an excellent point. So with these automated systems, we probably won't need keys, and so you wouldn't need AI to tell you that. But I think as humans, it is a funny paradox because often we will criticize our memory. Damn it, I can't find it, whether it's the keys or something else. I can't find these fingernail clippers, or you're looking for stuff. But our memories are also amazing. So our ability to recall a word for a young child when it hears a word for the first time, there's something happening there that is, but you bring up an important point. Some of the things we try to remember, we won't have to remember. We won't need, but that's the hope is AI.
But there will be other things other issues will be opened. We won't need keys, but there will be keys, but there will be other things.
Yeah.
So then we will need assistance from an AI. But is it going to harm our own intelligence? If I'm relying on Google and on my phone because it's remembering all the numbers. I barely remember any phone number anymore. And when I was a kid, I knew probably like 50 phone numbers by heart. So am I getting less intelligent because I'm relying on technology so much?
So intelligence is in different dimensions, and so there are some. I bet there are some things.
But you need to train it all the time. Practice.
Yeah, it would be constantly learning. But the key question is: are you getting less intelligent by being lazy? I don't have to remember these things. AI will remember it. Maybe there could be an argument there, but with the free time and the extra cycles, you can spend it learning about physics, quantum mechanics, chemistry, whatever you care to learn about. Oh, I had another thought that just left me about that. Oh, so here's another example that's more specific. If AI will do all the math, why do we need to learn math? If AI will do all the calculus, why do we need to learn calculus? For that example, it's important for people when you run into outlier, when you run into the hard problems, you actually have to know the fundamentals. If you're doing the easy stuff, you don't have to know anything. Even with AI, if you're doing easy stuff, you don't have to know the fundamentals. But my hope is we'll spend more cycles working on the hard problems. And if I never have to remember where my keys are, and if I don't have to remember people's names, because I've got Google Apps just telling me everyone's names and making it very personal, I personally would jump at that. But it's an excellent question.
Okay, any other questions? I mean, we're out of time, but anyway, if there is a question, we can always answer it. If not, okay, one question here. Microphone, quickly. Wait a second, quick. Here.
So, very inspiring speech, by the way. Thanks a lot. One of the toughest nuts to crack for AI would be behavioral science, human behavior overall. Do you have any experience in that field, automating kind of analysis of human behavior and predicting human behavior in complex situations?
So when I worked at HireVue, I had to interact with IO psychologists, so industrial organizational psychologists, and their job is to predict competencies. So there's different types of behaviors, and in the behavior of whether or not someone will be a good performer or a good employee is interesting because some people criticize it that it's a social science. You look at big five personalities, and some people say they're garbage when it comes to predicting outcome. Humans are also very complicated. I think there's some behaviors that you could predict, but it's something that's fairly complicated to think about. So one of the issues you're dealing with is humans are infinitely complex. To just say there's only 5 personalities or there's only so many mental disorders, I like to argue that all of us have some fraction of a mental disorder. Like all of us have some level of schizophrenia or depression or anxiety or like, and that's the challenge is, but ultimately this reminds me that if AI can begin to understand our behaviors, it might help us in the fight on figuring out how to optimize life. Because universal income, which was talked about yesterday, if universal income is given to everyone, that could actually be a disaster. So the disaster is, do you want me to give you a salary where you can go drink beer and surf every day? Yes, please. That sounds great. But now 5 years later, you're actually incredibly depressed. Surfing and drinking beer is not giving you purpose. It's not. So I like to think that there's something about humans that we want to challenge. The hero's journey it's baked into us. We celebrate that, and AI might help us manage that. So I think there is a scenario where there's a personal life coach that will help us mature on this path to becoming, being able to bring ourselves back to center, not letting our emotions control us, having more empathy, listen more, get past that ego journey sooner, where we can be kinder. But yeah, it's a profound question you're asking because it's very gray, and there's a lot of things that aren't known even now about human behavior.
But it is kind of a holy grail for AI as well, right?
Yes. And we're making progress. The models we built at HireVue and in other HR companies, they're pretty predictive for some job families, for customer-facing roles, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, because we're entering the other speech for about 7 minutes now. So Ben,
And
thank you. Thank you
everyone.
for the speech.